She thought it was just another quiet evening walk. The air was still, the street was empty, until flashing lights cut through the darkness. Within seconds, 3 officers stepped out, closing in on her like predators circling prey. No crime, no warning, no explanation. Just one thing in common. They had chosen her. But what they didn't know was that she wasn't alone. And what happened next would leave everyone asking, how far will racism go before something finally breaks? Her name was Maya Johnson, 32 years old, a nurse who had spent her entire shift tending to patients, just trying to heal others while carrying the weight of her own exhaustion. That night, all she wanted was peace. A walk around her neighborhood with her dog, Shadow, a large German shepherd she had raised since he was a puppy. To Maya, Shadow wasn't just a pet. He was family. Protective, loyal, and highly trained. Her father, a retired military handler, had taught Shadow commands most dogs could never master. He wasn't aggressive by nature, but if danger ever came close, Shadow knew how to act. The streets were familiar, lined with old oaks and the soft glow of porch lights. Maya had walked this same route countless times, her headphones in, shadows, steady steps beside her. For a brief moment, she felt normal, safe. But safety is fragile when the world sees only the color of your skin. As she turned the corner, the sound of tires screeched. A police cruiser slowed, its headlights sweeping over her like a spotlight. Another car pulled in behind it. Then another. 3 sets of doors opened. Officers stepped out, their eyes locked on her, their movements deliberate. Maya froze. She hadn't broken any laws. She wasn't speeding. She wasn't even driving. Yet the way they spread out, circling, told her everything she needed to know. Something was about to happen. The night air grew heavier with each step the officers took. Maya's pulse quickened, her grip on Shadow's leash tightening. The street was quiet, eerily so, as though the neighborhood itself was holding its breath. "Ma'am, stop right there." The voice was sharp, commanding, yet laced with something more than authority. Contempt. Maya turned slowly, her eyes darting between the 3 officers. Their hands hovered near their belts, one already resting on his holster. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. What could she say? She had no idea why they were here. Shadow, sensing her unease, moved closer to her side. His ears pricked, his body tense. One officer stepped forward. "What are you doing out here this late?" It was a question that wasn't really a question. A man walking his dog wouldn't be asked that. But a black woman, alone on a dim street? Suddenly, her very existence required justification. "I'm walking my dog," Maya managed, her voice steady but low. The officer's smirk was cold. "At this hour? In this neighborhood?" She felt her stomach knot. She lived here. This was her street. Yet their words made it clear they didn't see her as belonging. The second officer circled slightly, flanking her, eyes narrowing at Shadow. "That's a big dog. Dangerous breed. You got a license for him?" Maya's mind raced. Every step they took seemed less about law and more about intimidation. She could feel the trap tightening. Shadow gave a low growl, not loud, but enough to echo in the silence. The officers stiffened. One of them rested a hand on his baton, the other shifted his weight forward. Maya knew what this looked like. She had seen it before. Black people cornered, accused, stripped of innocence before they could even explain. The officers didn't want answers. They wanted control. Her heart pounded. Should she argue? Should she stay silent? She remembered the countless names, the countless stories that ended in tragedy. And now she was standing in one. Shadow leaned forward slightly, his stance protective. One officer's hand twitched at his holster. The other muttered something under his breath. The air felt like it was seconds from snapping, like a rubber band stretched to breaking point. Maya whispered one word, a command her father had taught her years ago. Shadow's ears flicked back. He didn't lunge, he didn't bark. He simply shifted, muscles coiled, his eyes locked on the men who circled them. And for the first time, the officers hesitated. But hesitation wasn't safety. It was a spark, and Maya could feel the fire about to erupt. The street seemed to shrink around them, every shadow pressing in, every second stretching into forever. Maya's breaths were shallow, her pulse racing. 3 officers circling, itching for a reason to escalate. One stepped forward, his hand tightening on the grip of his gun. "Control your animal before I put it down," he snapped. His voice cracked like a whip in the silence. Shadow's body stiffened. His growl deepened, low and dangerous, vibrating through the pavement. His eyes locked on the threat, unblinking, unafraid. Maya tightened her grip on the leash, whispering another command under her breath. A command only Shadow understood. The officers froze for a fraction of a second. They had expected fear, compliance, but what they saw was control. This wasn't a frantic woman with a dog. This was a woman who knew her ground, and a dog trained to defend it. One officer barked, "Get on your knees!" The words rang out, sharp and cold. Another shifted his stance, baton raised halfway. The tension was unbearable. One wrong twitch, one wrong glance, and everything would explode. Shadow stepped forward just one deliberate stride, his body forming a shield between Maya and the advancing officer. His teeth bared, not wild, not reckless, but precise, trained. The officer flinched. His bravado cracked as he stumbled back half a step. The others glanced at each other, the illusion of dominance slipping. For a moment, power shifted. 3 armed men, their weapons ready, undone by the silent defiance of one woman and her dog. But Maya knew how fragile this balance was. All it would take was one officer drawing his weapon, one panicked reaction, and Shadow would be gone. She would be gone. The air was electric, every nerve on fire. Shadow held his ground, a living barrier between cruelty and survival. And in that frozen standoff, with fear clawing at her chest, Maya realized this moment would define her. Either she and Shadow walked away, or they became another headline the world would argue about tomorrow. The standoff stretched on, the silence broken only by Shadow's low, steady growl. 3 officers, 3 guns, and yet not one dared to move closer. Their eyes flickered with something they rarely felt: uncertainty. Finally, one officer muttered, "Let's go. Not worth it." He lowered his hand from his holster and stepped back. The others hesitated, then followed, retreating to their cars without another word. Tires screeched, engines roared, and just like that, they were gone. But the damage had been done. Maya stood trembling, her hands shaking as she clutched Shadow's leash. She had survived the night, but not the fear, not the humiliation, not the knowledge that her life had been hanging by a thread for no reason other than the color of her skin. Shadow pressed against her leg, protective until the very end. He hadn't attacked, hadn't lunged, yet his presence had been enough. Enough to remind her that even in a world stacked against her, she was not powerless. As she walked home, her mind raced. How many others hadn't been so lucky? How many hadn't had a trained dog, or a witness, or even a chance to defend themselves? For every Maya who made it home, countless others became names on a growing list the world pretends to forget. That night, she realized survival shouldn't feel like victory. It should feel like the bare minimum. And so the question lingers. How many more stories like Maya's will it take? How many more lives must tremble on the edge before the world finally admits racism isn't just history? It's here. It's now. And it must end. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Maya's experience is not fiction, for so many. It's reality, repeated in neighborhoods across the country and around the world. Every view, every share, every voice matters, because silence only protects the system that allows injustice to continue. So I'll leave you with this question. If you were in Maya's place that night, who would stand with you? Think about it. Share this story. And let's keep the conversation alive until change is no longer a dream, but a reality.